I'd just like you to kind of talk a little bit about your background as a filmmaker, as a person, where you're from, where you got your start, things like that, standard interview stuff. So I don't mess up any origin information.
Yeah, sure. My background is as an actor. I started acting when I was 11 years old, and I acted in maybe close to 100 sort of feature film and television productions and commercials and that kind of thing. And I got kind of disillusioned with acting, I think more so the powerlessness of it. And I was trapped into kind of playing the same roles of the rebellious girlfriend or whatever. So I was looking for something new, and when I was 18, I read Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood, and I'd read it before it hit the shelves. It was on the tail of The Handmaid's Tale, was out in cinemas, and I, of course, was familiar with Margaret Atwood, and I read this, I read Cat's Eye, and I fell madly in love with it, and I became obsessed with becoming a part of seeing it be turned into a movie. So, through my acting connections, I basically put out feelers. I said, I want to option this book. I'd never produced anything before in my life. I reached her manager, and she told me that, there was some steep competition because Jodie Foster was interested, and Jane Fonda's company was interested, and yada yada. And I basically went, all right. So I had a week to put together a treatment, find a co-producer, and attach a director. And I managed to do that, and I met with Margaret Atwood, and she went for it. And so that was my sort of move behind the camera into producing, and working on that film really became my university, because there were so many ups and downs in trying to make that movie, and going from one director and one lead actor to another, from Meryl Streep to Glenn Close to Jessica Lange but I learned so much in the process, and I started producing, and I've produced 18 films, I think, combination of shorts and feature films, and that really is kind of my foundation to filmmaking, is just knowing how to get things done. And in 2006, I think, I'd done some short films, but I was inspired to make a feature film with my son when he was 12 years old. And I think in 2008, I had a film at the Toronto International Film Festival called Nurse Fighter Boy, which I was the producer and co-writer of, which was done through the Canadian Film Centre, which is a school founded by Norman Jewison. And that same year, I had my first feature film, Only, which starred my son Jacob Switzer, and that was at TIFF the same year. And then I basically I fell in love with directing, but I would say that I definitely split my time between producing films for other people, like Peter Mettler, and other filmmakers that I'm really inspired by, and then directing also. So it keeps me on my toes, I think, moving from helping other people make their own films happen, and then, trying to sort of flex my muscles and apply what I've learned to the projects that I've written and want to direct myself.
Right. So going back to Cat's Eye, that's really the story of your career is doing this stuff yourself. It sounds like you just jumped right into it. You correct me if I'm wrong, but you had no formal training or anything at a film school? Is that right?
No, I think the numerous years I spent on sets as an actor was really my training, because I formed my network through working with so many crews, working with so many other actors, working with so many directors. That really became my network. So when I started producing myself, I had all those people to call on, and I would say Toronto's been really generous with me transitioning from being an actor to sort of generating my own projects and working, behind the scenes as a writer, director, producer. There was no sort of stigma like, you're an actor, that's where you should stay, or anything like that. There was only support from I would say not only the actors and crews, but also the community and equipment houses and post-production houses and everything. That was really encouraging for me. And then that my first feature film got into the Toronto International Film Festival. That was a huge platform. So I would say that, man, like, a lot of those encouraging factors kind of kept me going. I mean, if my first feature didn't get into TIFF, or if it was just roadblock after roadblock, it's hard not to be ground down, you know? I talk a lot about, you know, just go out there and do it, and you know, it's an exciting time to be an independent filmmaker because we can make high-quality work, I think, for very little money, and we have access to audiences, but it's really hard if you've got no one sort of championing and supporting you, because you can't do it by yourself, really. I mean, DIY is like, do it yourself with a village, you know? You can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's too hard.
Right. So do you think that then, you know, being an actor for so long and acting in so many different, you know, films and TV shows, does that help you when you're directing? Like, do you feel yourself morphing into, like, the actor side whenever you want to connect with your actors, and then you know so much about behind the scenes too? I mean, do you feel yourself trying to play that many roles on set, or are you just focused on, you know, one thing?
No, I'm a multitasker. I mean, in my life in general, I can't cook because I can't just focus on one thing. I have to cook and do emails and wash the dishes and put in a load of laundry. So I really love the multitasking of working with a very small crew of, you know, just 2 or 4 people, and having my hands on getting the locations, having my hands on the transport, on all the scheduling, on the post-production supervision, on working with the actors, on writing it, on all the creative and the administrative stuff. That doing that really creates a balance in me. So I really like that. But I would say for sure, all my experiences as an actor has really helped me work with actors as a director, because first of all, I love actors. I love working with them. So I really get in the ring. I have a way that I imagine the performance in my dreams. I have a way that I hear the dialogue in my head, having, you know, spent time writing each line. But then I really love collaborating. So I think that sometimes in my films being described, there's always a nod to improvisation. But I really would say, and I think if you spoke to the people that work with me, there's very little to no improvisation, but there is flexibility, and it's a kind of controlled chaos where, you know, you have your vision of the film and you have your plan of execution and your goals and aims for the day, but there has to be a willingness and a place to surrender into the new thing that's a true collaboration between me and the cinematographer, or me and the actor. So it becomes a thing I can't possibly imagine at my computer or in pre-production. The film really becomes a living organism, and that's really exciting to me. And that ability of trusting your actors, but also knowing when you want to sort of stay true to your idea and you just need them to kind of, you know, be on side with that push and pull of it, of letting go and holding on to stuff, for me is the essential practice of filmmaking. And it's a practice. That's why you have to keep doing it, because you can get out of shape with that really quickly. It's a muscle.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you're saying about, you know, loving actors and loving to work with actors and everything, that reminds me of what you had said about the way that you had made the Animal Project after you spoke to us after the screening at the Three Rivers Film Festival. And I just kind of want you to talk a little bit about that, because forgive me, it's been a couple months since I heard you talk about that, but I remember it being a really incredible, you know, way of starting a film that I had never heard before. So just for the sake of this interview, I'd like you to tell it again how you got started with the Animal Project.
Yeah, I mean, I really, after I'm a Good Person, I'm a Bad Person, which is a film that I made while I was at different film festivals, and I acted in it with my daughter.
Yeah, you actually you gave that to me on DVD, and I actually
so cool. Yeah,
it was
I mean,
excellent.
I sort of realized that I'd never really shot a film in Toronto, and I came back from the festivals sort of feeling like, A, I wanted to shoot a film in Toronto, where I lived, and B, I wanted to work with professional actors and actors that I didn't know personally. I wanted to sort of have the challenge of writing for voices and for actors that I wasn't familiar with, because I'd done so many films with my family, and in my previous work I mixed professional and non-professional actors, but really I wrote for people that I'd known. I wrote the big roles were all for people that I knew pretty well. So I wanted the challenge of writing for people I didn't know, and I wanted to work with professional actors, and I wanted to shoot in Toronto. But I had no concept for a film. So I went, all right, I'm just going to, I literally woke up one day, and I think I ran the idea by my daughter, and I said, look, I'm just going to I'm going to work with a casting director, Nicole Hilliard-Ford, who was like the first person I called, and I pitched the idea of, I just want to put a letter out to all the agents in Toronto and say, I want to make a new film, I want to shoot in Toronto, I want to take my time to do it, so it's going to be a 3-month shoot. I don't have a lot of money, so I'm going to promise to shoot only 3 days each week, so the actors and the crew can kind of make money doing other jobs the rest of the time. But I'm basically looking to meet with actors that will commit to working with me, knowing that I have no idea for a movie, and that I want them to commit before they know anything about the roles they're going to play. And it was kind of a test of faith. Like, I wanted to take a leap into challenging myself in a different way, and I wanted the creators, the actors, the crew to take that leap with me. And if no one was willing, then the Animal Project wouldn't exist. But I put it out to the agents, and I guess on the back of my 3 other films, I met, actors were curious. I think it also really helped that I was an actor in I'm a Good Person, I'm a Bad Person. As a director, I was on the front lines as an actor in that film, and I was vulnerable, and I was exposed, and I was playing, between this blurry line of who I really am and a character. And I think actors were like, okay, she's up there and she wants to do something new and creative, like, we'll meet with her. So 100 actors met with me, and I met with them 5 at a time over 2 days. And really, because again, I had no script, no nothing, we spoke about process. I spoke about how I really wanted to form a company of actors that were not only interested in being in the film, but being on the front lines of marketing the film for me, because I know what it takes to kind of find an audience for your film after it's finished. And I had some music on an iPod that I put in the center of the room, and I just watched them listen to music. I had books in the room, about 100 different books, all kinds of different books, and I had each actor select a book. I observed which book they selected, and I had them read the first sentence written by the author, and that was it. And they were like 20-minute meetings, and after those 2 days, I went away, and I just sort of thought about which actors I couldn't get out of my mind. And again, I still had no idea for a movie. And then I met with 10 actors, and this was the second meeting, 1 at a time, and I met with them for a half an hour, and for the first 10 minutes, we sat in silence, because I like awkwardness, and I thought, if I can't be awkward with someone, it's probably going to be really tense working together, so let's see what it feels like to just sit awkwardly together. And then for the second 10 minutes, I asked very personal questions, and I basically said, you could lie or tell me the truth, but I'm going to write down your answer, and from this point on, whatever you say, you let me use in the script. So I asked them questions, I wrote stuff down, and then for the last 10 minutes, they could ask me whatever they wanted. I could also give myself permission to lie or tell the truth. And that was that half-hour meeting. And from those 10 actors, I selected the 8 that are in the film. I promised each of them roles. They promised to give me 3 months of their life, and then I went off and wrote the script. And I presented the script to them, and it was really interesting kind of watching them all be really curious about the roles I wrote for them, and they all met for the first time on the first day of shooting, which is the interview scene, which is the first scene in the movie. So it was a really unconventional and strangely backwards way of promising roles to actors and then writing the script. And it was certainly challenging. I don't know if I would ever do it again. I think that writing a script and then going out and casting it makes a lot more sense. But at the same time, I think that the process of the Animal Project, that very nature of it sort of being born lives in the film somehow. And that's something that's intangible, and I'm still kind of observing and understanding, but I think it's exciting to me that if I'd written the script and then went out and cast the actors in the traditional way, I think the Animal Project would have been a very different film.
Yeah, you can sort of feel this sort of like underlying, like, I almost want to say like an urgency, like everybody, it seems like all these actors were sort of in your same mindset, you know, getting to know them for that long. It felt like everybody was sort of in on the same page with it. And it does feel
exactly.
Like...
And I think that the process of me sort of creating this challenge for myself and taking the leap into doing something that I don't know if I could do. I mean, it could have been an absolute disaster. So I took a leap into a process that was kind of irrational, but that I had an instinct about. And the actors took a leap into this experience also probably being full of fear, but kind of quasi-trusting and having instinct about it being worthwhile. And the actors took a leap. And inside the film, the characters are taking a very similar leap in becoming a part of the Animal Project, which doesn't really make sense, but they kind of do it, and it's irrational and could really fail and lead nowhere, but they do it. And I think as a result, the audience is kind of taking a leap into this film too, which is, as an audience, they're watching something that's kind of irregular and odd and unconventional and shouldn't really work, but hopefully does in some way. And that makes it feel original and fresh and exciting. And I think that is like inside the film, there's a kind of cyclical theme of repetition. I think, you know, when I was writing, I was visualizing a spiral, and I think that the very nature of the film really lives in the film, and I think is a part of the audience experience also.
Yeah, and you know, talking about all of this, you know, everything that went into this film and all of it feeding into the final product, I mean, I guess it would be an understatement to say that it's complex, but then I remember you pointing out the quietness of the film, and you know, it just sounds like such an you know, and how entirely opposite that must have been, you know, the editing that and making that decision for there to be a lot of, you know, quiet, sort of somber moments, no, you know, consistent score throughout the whole movie. Because I feel like music sometimes in movies sort of, you know, funnels the viewer's emotions into something that, you know, that might not be their genuine reaction to whatever's happening on screen. So I want you to kind of talk a little bit about that. You know, is that a correct assumption, or what was? Because I remember you had said something about it. I don't remember what you had said specifically about the reason why you chose to sort of let the film speak without the music.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's absolutely correct. Like you're the way you speak about it is right, in that the film is sort of about, I mean, some of the ideas in the film are about performance and about authenticity and our connections to each other, and acting is a lot about, you know, acting is about being truthful in the moment, but it's also about lying. I mean, actors are professional liars, and I really wanted this film to be raw in its performance. I mean, the actors are really naked up there, and being naked is really an important part of the Animal Project. Being vulnerable, being exposed, being naked. And the music was just getting in the way of that. I mean, music could have tied a lot of thematic ideas together, could have really aided in transitions, could have created like maybe bigger emotional impact. But every time I explored putting music on the film, it rejected it. It was like, stay out of the way of the simplicity and the spareness and the rawness of this, because that's actually the true essence of the film. And if I ever wanted to kind of, smooth out rough edges or gloss it up or make it sparkle and shine, the film, I swear to God, was just saying, no way, no can do.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about a film this way, as if it's like, actually an animal itself. It's like you're saying that it rejected it and it didn't want that. And it's like you don't hear that too often. It's almost like it's refreshing to hear you have so much control over your films, but then it's also like you're sort of relinquishing control to like what you've created. And I just think it's just funny to hear, somebody talk like that. And
yeah,
I admire that. It's
yeah, and I think that's also an element of being a parent. Like, the director is kind of the parent, and inside the film, there's a father-son story. But you have a kid, and they want to go out, in really inappropriate clothing. And as a parent, you're always in the situation of, they want to do that, like, or they want to wear something, or they want to do something that is going to make them have a really tough time at school. Mm-hmm. And if they just put on the nice little dress and did this and wore the shiny shoes, and they would be really accepted, and they would be loved, and they would be celebrated, and they would whatever. Or they, if they, more specifically, like a personal story is that when I was in kindergarten, there was some drawing assignment, and I can remember very specifically painting the sky magenta. And the teacher came by and said, the sky has to be blue. And I really wanted to keep it magenta. And basically, my picture didn't get put on the bulletin board of all the, most beautiful pictures. And so there's a part of you that just goes, just paint the sky blue, and then you'll get to be on the board, and you'll get a little star on your picture, and life will be so much easier for you. But you can't. There's the betrayal of something. And I feel the same way when we talk about music for this film, that I think music would have made this film more accessible, and, people would have been more unified in their experience or whatever. But it's not actually true to the heart and essence of the film. Mm-hmm. And it's something I think you have to know when. I could have forced music on it, but really you have to listen to what the film wants to be, just like you have to listen to your kid, and you have to get out of the way. And it's not going to the film's not going to want to always do what you want it to do. And it's challenging. It's challenging to stay out of the way and not force something on it.
So would you say
it takes a lot of faith also, and a lot of tolerance and acceptance and patience, and that's also what the film is about.
Yeah.
It's about people being tolerant and patient and accepting of themselves and one another, and all the irregularity of that. So I had to really respect it, even though I thought, okay, it's going to have a bit of a harder time out in the world because of this one choice of music versus no music.
So are these things then these thoughts that came up after you had already started filming? Or are these sort of because your films, to me, especially I'm a Good Person, I'm a Bad Person, and I think even the Animal Project to an extent sort of seemed almost. I'm a Good Person, I'm a Bad Person for sure seemed like it was a very personal story for you. Now I don't know if you had. The only thing that happened to coincide with your life was that it was your daughter who was in the film, or with the Animal Project, it was your son who was in the film. Are these sort of therapeutic projects for you, or like?
I would say both films of like everything I do. I think is quite personal and very sort of. I'm taking things from my own life all the time, plus maybe they shape-shift a little bit and become partly imagined and partly real experiences. They sort of become a third thing in the process, just like a collaboration is between me and an actor. It becomes a third thing, so it's neither exactly the factual thing, nor is it something completely imagined, but the concrete thing of having my kids in the film is just I love working with them, and they trust me, and there's a shorthand, and I don't have to earn all of that, you know? Whereas working with new people, there's always a process of get to know you and resistance. And my kids, I've known them their entire life, so they just trust me, and I respect them so much. And it's a really cool relationship to have because I think they're amazing actors, and I respect them so much. And then we have this amazing experience of, you know, traveling together, Jacob coming to India or Hallie coming to Australia and all over Europe, and so it contributes to the family. So I would say the personal thing there is me as a woman trying to hold a marriage and being a responsible, good mother and being a filmmaker artist at the same time, and working with my kids, and thankfully they're into that, is a way to help hold that together so that my work doesn't always take me away from my family.
Yeah.
But on the point of how personal things are, I mean, being a filmmaker and playing a filmmaker in the Animal Project who's trying to market and distribute her film and traveling to film festivals and having great experiences but also very alienating, lonely experiences, that's life on tour. I mean, it's crazy. And then in the Animal Project, I mean, from the get-go, from the first interview scene where Alice, who plays the rabbit, speaks about being sort of traumatized by her babysitter, you know, who told her that homeless people don't wear underwear. I mean, when I was 5 years old, that's what my babysitter told me. I would say throughout the Animal Project, there are absolutely things directly from my life in all of the characters. Never mind the fact that we shot in my actual house, and that's my real 12-year-old rabbit, and my son is my son, and, you know, the director, Aaron Poole plays the director, definitely that character has a lot of his energy and his qualities, but is a true combination of who he is and who I am.
Right,
that's so cool. That's really a cool thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's fascinating. And now, you know, you were talking about, you know, traveling and
Can I say one more thing about that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, just that it's inside the film lives the Bunny Project, right? Which is the actual film, my actual very first film that I did as part of a 24-hour film challenge.
Yeah, I forgot that you
starred my son when he was 8 years old, and now 10 years later we're making the Animal Project, and I'm using the Bunny Project, which is really my film, and the voice of my son in interviews, you know, doing interviews with him as an 8-year-old about his ideas of art and God and life and birth and death, and all of those things live in the film. And that's, you know, that's kind of interesting because, you know, there's subtle things throughout, like when the lion and beaver are running around the streets doing kind of a Buster Keaton-esque chase thing, they sit on a rock, and that rock is the very same rock that, you know, we used in the Bunny Project. So there's repetition of location. There's like really beautiful things in the wardrobe, which Hallie designed, where all the characters are wearing solid colors, and the father and the son are the only ones that ever wear patterns. So they're in plaid, and their plaid shirts are a combination of all the color palette of all the other characters. You know, and in the whole color palette of the film, there's always a reference to all the characters being aspects of Leo, and the son also, and the son-father connection. So, and that's to me, that's all really personal, because that's like creating subtle links, and that to me is like the center of the spiral, you know?
Right. So was that your daughter? Your daughter is Hallie, correct?
Yeah.
That was her idea to do that?
Yeah, well, we spoke. I mean, she's the costume designer and the production designer, but that was a thematic thing, like in the sense of the film being structured as a spiral and there being thematic elements of repetition. And I remember like having swatches of fabric on the wall in the bedroom and creating the entire palette of all the clothes for all the actors and deciding specifically what shade they would be in and how that would reflect Leo's plaid shirt and all of that. Yeah, it's definitely definitely a creative choice that comes from her and I together.
So I mean, you have so much to say about this film, and it's fascinating, and I just want to know what does it feel like to, I mean, you've traveled the world with this film already, and
Yeah.
I mean, what is it like to, like, are you just like, as soon as you get off the plane, you're like waiting to scream all these things about your film to everybody? But I mean, what is that like? Been traveling with this baby?
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible connecting with people. I mean, some people really, really resonate with the father-son story. In some cases, they've lost someone, or they have a kind of broken relationship, and maybe they haven't touched, the teenager haven't hugged or had any contact with their parent in years, or vice versa. The parent, it's like there's no bridge to their teenagers. And so they are often, sometimes people come to me with a lot of emotion and being really overwhelmed and feeling a sense of healing, or feeling a sense of wanting to connect with their family or something like that. And then there is the creators, the actors that really resonate with it. And not just I wouldn't say just actors of film and stage, but also chefs or athletes or musicians or anybody that's had a dream and has maybe not followed through on that because of different obstacles in their lives. Maybe they felt like they have to do something more steady to earn money, or they were never supported, or they were sort of paralyzed by fear or something. So for people that have that creative juice in them, there's a really strong reaction by the end of the film, when he says, 6 people dressed in animal suits appear in an expanse of snow. We are a chorus line of misfits. I am part of them. We are fearless. And the whole sort of questioning of making a film, and whether it's a pointless humiliation, and what is the value of creating? What does it lead to? And maybe it doesn't lead to anything. Maybe just the act of doing it is enough. And that really, for people that have creative impulses, that's the thing that really resonates, and that's the thing that they want to talk to me about. So we talk about meaning, and we talk about, what meaning is. I remember in Ashland, Oregon, at the Ashland Independent Film Festival, there was a gentleman that just wanted to talk to me about meaningfulness for like half an hour, and that was really interesting,
So do you make movies then? Would you say you make movies to get those sort of reactions, those dynamic reactions from people, or are you just making these things and throwing them out there and seeing what happens?
No, I mean, I think that I'm really interested in communicating. So, and that starts from the beginning, from when I hit the blank page. I think of, I want to communicate something, and again, it usually comes from my life. It's usually personal, and then it kind of changes and evolves into some dreams and reality. And then I want to work with people, so then the collaboration starts there, and I'm really interested in that exchange. And then it can't end when the film is done, and it absolutely extends beyond that. And then the full circle of it is now letting the film kind of be itself in the world, and seeing how audiences everywhere resonate with it, and what kind of conversations that inspires, what kinds of connections, what kinds of friendships. That's, like, to me, the ultimate. And if I made a film and it didn't do that, if it didn't connect with anyone, that would be a tragedy for me. Because it's not just about the making, it's really ultimately about the communicating. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm in now with the release, and that's really, and it's a full year of work from when the film is finished. And we finished in August. We were in TIFF in September. I've been to almost 30 film festivals, and next week we hit the Lightbox in Toronto theatrically, so that becomes like the rock show of it, We have animals on the streets, we have a big art exhibition, and I just met with a street graffiti artist that's going to do an amazing art piece on some storefronts on Queen Street, and, we make a big sort of party event of that. At the same time, for everyone else across Canada, it'll be on iTunes on the same day, and for everyone else around the world in the States and elsewhere, it'll be on Vimeo on the same day. So that's really exciting, because I don't think that's ever really happened to a Canadian film, where we've been able to sort of line up all the platforms, and especially for a small film, small kind of handmade film like this, to give it that kind of access at one time everywhere. That's really exciting to me. So I hope some cool conversations come out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to ask you about the online sort of landscape. I mean, do you think that it's shifting to sort of favor independent filmmakers? I mean, you've done a lot of promo yourself online. I see, on the Animal Project Facebook and Instagram, it's like you're posting stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And since you're releasing the film on Vimeo, I mean, do you think that this is sort of like a vital route for independent filmmakers to take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great for the Animal Project, because I was one of the first people that stepped onto the Vimeo VOD offer that came out of TIFF. So Vimeo, I think they just had their VOD up for maybe 1 year, like in September 2013, and they were interested in doing a spotlight on 10 world premieres at the Toronto International Film Festival. They're not all Canadian, but 10 world premieres. And they've been doing similar sort of ventures at Sundance and South by. But TIFF was the first, and I thought it was so cool to commit to that and know that I could then announce that at every film festival I was at, because typically at film festivals, you're screening to the few hundred people, and there's always someone that says, okay, so how can I tell my friends to see your film? And you're like, well, you can email me, and I can send you a password protected link, or I can snail mail you out a DVD. But it was so cool to say June 6th, because we had our theatrical release date. June 6th, you'll be able to see it on Vimeo. On this day, on this platform, wherever there is an internet connection, it will be available. And that felt really great. It's the first time I've been able to do that. But that gave every film festival platform a different kind of opportunity for the film. Because it wasn't just a one-off. It was a one-off that was potentially leading to a bigger audience in that area.
So, just to get some of the sort of basic information, you said it was June 6th, correct?
Yeah, Friday, June 6th.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that. And then, is there like a specific time, or is it just going to be, at midnight?
I think it's going to be as of midnight, just after midnight. So officially, when it turns June 6th, the Animal Project will be available on Vimeo.
Okay.
If you go Vimeo VOD, the Animal Project.
All right.
I can absolutely send you the link.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. And now there's going to be a charge for viewing it then, correct?
There's going to be a what?
A charge? Like you'd have to pay to view it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, I set the price at $4.99 for a rental, and that's for 48 hours, and then you can buy it for $12.99. So Vimeo is available everywhere outside Canada, and it's sort of the same deal on iTunes in Canada.
Well, I will tell you now that I'll definitely be buying it. I enjoyed it a lot.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And you know what? I would love if you, because now it's not live. I think it's available for pre-buy, but when it goes live, you can comment on the page.
Oh, sure.
And the first comments, like always, are the first comments. So it would be awesome. It would be great if you felt, that you would like to comment on the page. I'd love to have your words up there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll absolutely do that. So I have it. Let me just make a note of that right here.
Yeah, so it's Vimeo.com on demand, the Animal Project, but I'll send it to you.
Okay, thanks. And now you were talking a little bit about Toronto. That's where my next few questions are going to circle around. I know that you've shown a few of your films there, and I know that you were just in Cannes. So I mean, how do you see these film festivals sort of fitting into the bigger picture of the industry? Are they, super important? Are they more about the money, or are they sort of about celebrating the sort of congregation of artists?
I mean, definitely they're not about the money, but they are about exposure, that with each film festival comes hopefully a little bit of local press, comes a live audience that you can exchange with, and again, especially whether you're doing a DIY VOD thing, or that meaning you're selling off your website, or you're working with a platform like Vimeo or iTunes, that exchange with living people, where you're dialoguing about the film, happens at film festivals, and for me, it's crucial. Plus, I love to travel. So a huge incentive for me to make films is that I get to see the world on the back of a film and visit places maybe I would never otherwise be able to go or afford to go, and have access to a place through a film festival. Like when I was in Santiago, Chile, I mean, I went on trips and I had access to Santiago and people and artists that I would have never otherwise encountered locally. And then there's the thing you just mentioned, which is the international exchange of seeing other filmmakers' work and loving it and bonding through the films, and then actually your life kind of changes. I mean, my world has absolutely been affected by my film festival experiences. I mean, I made a film about that very thing, but about through my film festival experiences, and the people I've met at film festivals have become some of my closest friends. Have become like family to me. So if film festivals didn't exist, I would say a huge reason why I make films would go away.
Now, see, I think it's interesting that you say that, because that you say that you don't necessarily think that they're about the money. That sounds rotten, the way that I put that. But because I think Toronto, especially the Toronto Film Festival, I think is becoming a really important film festival on the award season circuit. And I mean, you have films like, The Artist, Silver Linings Playbook, Argo, 12 Years a Slave, Gravity. They're all Best Picture winners or nominees at the Oscars. And they're showing at that festival. It's been, I think, 3 or 4 years now that the Oscar Best Picture has shown at Toronto. It might even be more than that. So do you think that's a good thing, or do you think that TIFF seems to be, bending more towards American tastes?
No, I think it's a great thing. I mean, TIFF has like 250 films, and there's no competition per se, in that there's no official competition where everybody's attention is focused on 20 or so films like in other festivals. It's an incredible, diverse slate of films, and then their galas are the ones with the stars, but their wavelengths program is much more alternative, or vanguard, or the contemporary world cinema, the Midnight Madness, more genre stuff. There's such an eclectic program at Toronto that I feel like the films that start their kind of Oscar campaign trail at TIFF, and the films that really leverage TIFF as a gateway, like the international films that leverage TIFF or hope that TIFF will be their gateway into the North American market, that's totally cool, and that's one strategy. But there's so much more that festival offers, I think, for all scales of film.
I mean, and
it's a really screenings sell out, and there's a huge appetite from Toronto audiences to see films. And for me, I mean, really and truly, I would have no career if it wasn't for Toronto, because of how highly it's regarded internationally, and because of how many films I've had programmed at that festival. That has launched me, absolutely.
So do you think
as a director, writer, without question, my path would be very different had it not been for that film festival alone. But when you say about money, I mean, there is potential, I think, if you screen at TIFF, that you can get acquired and your film could get sold, and that could lead to some great revenue. But it's hard, right? There's so many films, and the little ones like mine don't often have big marketing dollars. So what it is good for is when you're at a festival like TIFF, or many of the other festivals I've been to, you have a chance at some media exposure, that the Canadian films are covered very well by the Canadian media, by Toronto-based critics, by actually, journalists and writers from across the country, so that Canadian films actually can reach an audience through the festival. And most, if not all, of the Canadian films I see at TIFF are sold out. So that means that upwards of 500 to 1,000 people are seeing that film, and many of them are from around the world. So it's a great platform for Canadian films, that maybe don't play a lot of other film festivals and wouldn't necessarily reach such an international audience.
See, and that's something that I feel like wasn't really a part of. There's always a narrative that surrounds any film festival and the trade publications, and I feel like it was either last year or this past one where I kept reading articles that were saying that TIFF is shifting away from Canadian cinema and it's not doing enough to promote Canadian cinema. And I remember that you said when you were in Pittsburgh that you asked the audience what we thought Canadian cinema was.
Yeah.
And I feel like nobody really had an answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had months to think about it, and, I still don't. I mean, I'm not familiar with Canadian cinema really as a whole. I'm, starting to get more familiar with your work. But I mean, do you have an answer for that? Do you?
No, I mean, it's a fascinating question, and it's a question that Canadian filmmakers are often asked, like, what is our cinema, what is our identity? Especially when we're talking about English Canadian cinema, right? Because French Canadian cinema does have its identity, and we see what Xavier Dolan's doing in the world. We saw what Jean-Marc Vallée has done, even, previous to Dallas Buyers Club, but now he's exploded, or Denis Villeneuve, is now exploded. And so many, Quebec has so many incredible women filmmakers. English Canada, I think, from the international sort of industry's point of view, is seen as America. I mean, in Cannes, I was at a round table with a sales agent, and I asked, last week, I said, is there any difference from your perspective between an English Canadian film and an American film? And she was like, no. There's no difference.
It's funny.
So the challenge for English Canadian films are if an international company, distributor, sales agent is going to acquire an English film, they tend to go towards the films with stars or some name cast or name director, like a Woody Allen or a Coen Brothers, or and that's what the English Canadian films are competing against in terms of sales. So all I can say is we have to be even more original, and we have to be even louder about the great films we make, and we have to start really fostering an appetite for our cinema inside our country. But it's tough, That's what I sort of feel like, I'm on Facebook and I'm on social media so much because so many of our films don't even get a chance at theatrical. There's so many other English films coming out of the U.S. that really a lot of Canadians, I don't know how devoted or committed they are to seeing Canadian films in the cinema. So when English Canadian film does get a theatrical release, I feel like it's really our responsibility to make it work and kind of shout it from the rooftops. Otherwise, it's going to go away. And we have to galvanize audiences, and it's a lot of work, but we have to do it when we have the opportunity to hit a big screen, like the Animal Project has. So I take that kind of responsibility really, really seriously. But in terms of defining, the Canadian cinema, I think it's still evolving. I think we're still quite young. And I think, to your point of TIFF, it was a tricky thing because they did have a Canadian program, Perspective Canada. They did have a program that was called Canada First, which was, a platform for first and second features by Canadian filmmakers. And the feedback kind of was that it was ghettoizing the Canadian films, and that Canadian filmmakers wanted to be perceived as competitive on an international level. So they kind of did away with that. little bit of spotlight, and they let all of us play in contemporary world cinema and in different categories. And I feel like you can't, there's pros and cons to both sides, but I think ultimately I'm a supporter of let us play on the international stage. Mm-hmm. Because it's where we belong, We belong, I think our country cinema is a cinema of art house. So let us play on the stage of international art house cinema.
But do you think then that is where you think Canadian cinema then is going to sort of find its what's the word I'm looking for? Is going to sort of find
voice, identity,
its prominence, I guess, on the world scene. I mean, because art house cinema, I don't think is something that really is hugely popular.
But it's filmmaker by filmmaker. Like this year in Cannes, Canada had an unprecedented 3 feature films in official competition. Mm-hmm. Xavier Dolan's Mommy, Cronenberg's Map of the Stars, and Adam McGoyan's The Captive. 3 films in official competition. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at those 3 films, what is the identity of those films? I mean, it's the filmmakers and the filmmakers' brand. Mm-hmm. So I sort of feel similar, like, what is the independent American cinema brand? It's like, it's filmmaker by filmmaker, Yeah. What is France's, I mean, yes, you can point to, like, periods of cinematic history, like the New Wave, the Nouvelle Vague, and all that, but really it's like we follow filmmakers, and then where they're from, I think, is a huge factor in, like, their perspective on the world and their voice and all of those things. But I'm actually cool with there not being, like, a Canadian cinema identity. I just think let's make good films, let's champion and support our filmmakers, let's galvanize our audience, and let's kind of take advantage of every opportunity to get our films out there and get them seen. Mm. But this unifying thing, I think, is potentially diluting. It's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
Let's be a country of a whole bunch of really fascinating and original filmmaking individuals.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I wasn't saying that.
No, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a big preoccupation with, like, what is the voice? Mm-hmm. And it's true. Maybe that's like it's what's it called? It's a mosaic.
Yeah. I just
as opposed to a melting pot. It's just a mosaic.
I just feel like so many people, especially the trade publications, think that, legitimacy somehow means commercial appeal. And I'm just thinking with, films like Maps to the Stars or Mommy, they don't sound like movies that would necessarily resonate with American or Canadian, mainstream audiences. So I'm just wondering if, I agree with you. I think that is what you're describing sounds like an ideal sort of way to exist as, the Canadian sort of, I don't want to say the Canadian identity based on what we just talked about, but, I don't know. I think it's going to be...
Canadian identity is a mosaic. I mean, it's full of this... Most people in Canada come from elsewhere,
I noticed that when I was in Toronto. It's like walking around. It's like I kept saying that to my friends, is that, I don't see one dominant race. I don't see one dominant... I don't hear one dominant language being spoken. I don't see one personality type. And it's like, even when you go to, New York or Los Angeles, I mean, you see, in New York, you primarily see... white and black. And I feel like when you go to Toronto, I felt like it was very odd. And I don't think a lot of people take the time to really notice that, because there's such a misconception of Canada. People always want to compare it to the United States. Yeah. And it's like proximity doesn't give you the right to do that.
Yeah. No, I think I really notice that, especially when I'm on the subway and stuff. I look around the subway train and I go, oh my God. I mean, there is every shade, every cultural background. There's so much diversity in the subway car. It's really, really true. Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, actually, I really love that. I mean, to me, it's all, it's where I feel comfortable, because I feel comfortable on a train of sort of misfits and outcasts and people that are from elsewhere and maybe are kind of struggling to belong, but are also okay with who they are, and they come from just this elsewhere-ness is where I feel really comfortable. And when everyone's trying to conform and everyone's trying to sort of, I don't know, when there's this herd mentality, I get really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody, let's say that somebody offered you the opportunity to direct then a Hollywood film with a $100 million budget and said, make this appeal to, you know, the world masses, would that freak you out?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I love stories, and again, I love engaging and connecting with people, so it wouldn't freak me out. I mean, I would say that in this age of, like, bigger, stronger, faster, my impulse is to go smaller, simpler, truer. Like, in this pace, I feel like I want to slow down and retreat a little bit, and part of that is making films in a very modest way for a little bit of money with a very small and tight and creative group of people that I really love and respect, as opposed to go big or go home. I'm like, that's not my, go big or go home is not my philosophy. It's more go inside and be as truthful as you can in this kind of crazy medium that involves a lot of collaboration. You know, what authentic thing can come out of that could resonate with a whole bunch of people that are maybe also misfits, dreamers, and, you know, kind of creators.
So it doesn't sound...
Like, what is that point of connection?
I mean, it doesn't...
I don't feel like you gotta go big and spend a lot of money to do that. And I mean, the only, where it gets tricky is that when you, okay, there's two things. One is that I personally, although I might be naive in this, think that if you make something handcrafted for a little bit of money, it doesn't mean that it's amateur or low quality, or that, you know, you had to make it that way because no one believed in it. I think you can make that as a choice, but I also think that when you make something in that way, there's so few people that are really invested that it's very tricky to make a big bang. And in fact, that's where you and journalists come in, because you're actually our gateway. To find those small little, you know, rough gems, you are our mouthpiece, because the films can't compete on their own. So through writers and journalists and critics, like, those small films can actually make, for something that's made with so little resource, can actually make a big bang. That is the most exciting thing to me. When I see that happen, that's so much more exciting than a huge $100 million film making a big bang. Because I'm like, well, obviously that will make a big bang, because they're just throwing a whole pile of money on it. But when a small thing breaks through, small personal work breaks through because people champion it, that gives me faith to keep going. Like, that actually inspires me.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, you know, and I just feel like so many people have a misconception of, you know, smaller independent films as, you know, intentionally going against the grain or something, and it doesn't sound like that's what you intend to do. I mean, you said it yourself that you're still trying to find things that will resonate with people and that will appeal to people, and I feel like films like yours, you know, I watch them and I can see where maybe somebody who is not necessarily, you know, somebody who I think is going to see, let's say, X-Men every weekend, I mean, I don't think that necessarily that's somebody who is going to watch an independent film and or who's even going to seek out an independent film. But I watch your films and I think these are things that everybody, no matter what their taste are or what their taste is, can sit down and watch this and get something out of it and feel inspired by it, or feel something from it. And I feel like people are just so resistant to do that, and I don't know why. I don't know why. I guess it's accessibility. Like, you know, you have a $100 million budget, you're going to be in every single theater on every single corner. And
Yeah.
I that's what I think is so exciting about the Animal Project being so accessible around the world all at one time. Is
Yeah.
that it's going to be easy for
I
people.
agree.
It's going to be
Yeah.
easy. And
So I hope
easy.
that, I'll do my best to kind of make that be known. I mean, at the end of this social media and grassroots on the front lines kind of push, I can't force people to go online and rent it or buy it or show up to the cinema, but my goal is that people at least know it exists. That's I feel what I owe the actors and what I owe the crew. And that's what we can do as filmmakers, right? So the first person that comes up to me and says, "Oh my God, I didn't hear about the Animal Project," and then you know what that does? That first time I get disappointed and I go, "All right, next time I just gotta go more.
Yeah.
I just gotta do more."
You got to push yourself.
Because that's the kind of unacceptable thing to me, that we make these films and that people aren't aware of them. That's sad. And there's always this kind of stigma of, oh, you should just cool out and let talent rise to the top and people will find your film. I just think, no, I don't think so. My friends have to be in my face about their theater productions and about their films. There's too much stuff going on all the time. It probably takes 5 hits of information in different ways for me to actually get to something, because so much is competing for our attention. So as filmmakers now, even though we have access to audiences, we have to work, I think, 10 times harder than I did even 5 years ago to make a dent. And that's just the job of it. And I think filmmakers, directors, maybe they just want to stay on the creative, but I think they have to become kind of traveling salesmen.
Yeah, well,
saleswomen, salespeople. You just have to develop that. Because counting on other people to do that work is unrealistic, Everyone's really busy.
So do you actually do things like in I'm a Good Person, I'm a Bad Person, where you're, that little the headpiece that you were wearing with the fake blood on it?
Yeah.
Are those things that you actually do?
No, but I'd say that's total metaphor.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm wandering. I mean, there's 2 things about that. One is, she's exhibiting something. I mean, her film is called Headshot, so it's a way to get attention for her film, but it's also a way for her to get attention, and it's also exhibiting that she's bleeding from her head, and that's sort of, metaphor for this film existing in the world, and actually no one really cares and no one notices. It's what do you have to do? Do I have to saw off my arms? What do I have to do to ignite, to engage, to get people's attention for a work or for a human being? I mean, we are just so overwhelmed. So it kind of was a nod to that. And I was amazed at how long I could walk around Berlin with my head in that bloody wrap, and I would say maybe 1 in 50 people would just take a second look or ask me if I was okay or something, but generally people didn't even notice.
So that's not
which
an
is
actual,
funny to me.
Tactic that you've used, going out on the street and just standing there all day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, God.
I do want to talk about that film a little bit. If you are we still good on time or?
Yeah, I'm still good. I'm being pulled downstairs a little bit, but absolutely.
Okay, I just have maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I hate that it's a reality that I have to address and single out, because I'm sure you talk about it all the time, or you're asked about it all the time. But I do think that it's refreshing to see in a movie like I Am a Good Person, I'm a Bad Person, to see female characters, as real people having real relationships and problems and being agents of their own stories, because we just don't see that in commercial movies. And I mean, you're proof that the stories are there and the stories exist. It's just that the studios aren't really distributing them on a mass scale. So when you're making a film with female characters, Do you think you're actively sort of trying to advance the presence of women in movies, or are you just kind of sitting back and letting your characters be your characters?
No, I mean, definitely I feel like in many films I'm seeing slivers of women, but I'm rarely seeing whole women. And women are really complex. And women that are depicted as just, mothers, as nurturers, I just think that's ridiculous. I mean, there's so many... I'm interested in the nooks and crannies and the cracks and the things between the lines and the flaws and, people that are struggling. I'm interested in women who are struggling as mothers, as creators, as partners, in the world. That's so much more interesting to me than seeing some sort of bullshit facade of someone that has their life together and it's just kind of quirky and funny and quippy and cute.
Yeah, life's
and it's really hot in bed and has flawless skin and is never constipated and has this perfect... No, I'm much more interested in the real stuff, but not in a documentary way, but the real stuff transformed into a narrative and a story and, writing a character. As a filmmaker, I'm not interested in just real life and pointing and shooting. I really love, and it's important for me, that combination of, pulling on the personal, pulling on the real life stuff, but then somehow heightening, amplifying, playing with themes and ideas, and elevating it into something that is maybe more universal. And is speaking to a woman that I'm more interested in seeing on screen, that is a complex and flawed woman. But flawed to me is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, there's a quote by Cassavetes that, do I have it written down somewhere? I think it's like, I don't want to misquote it. Let me see if I have it. Oh, yeah. So the only thing you need to make a film is not be afraid of anybody or anything. And I love John Cassavetes, so I read that and I think, cool, but that's not me. I mean, I'm afraid and I'm full of doubt and I am, kind of uncertain all the time. But I think to live and create and be in the world in spite of that or with that, through that, like be afraid and terrified of doing something and doing it anyway, being uncertain at the top of each day and just plowing through anyway, that's much more interesting to me.
For sure. All right, and that actually, I mean, I'm going to kind of breeze through this because I know you're being pulled downstairs, but I'm also, that reminds me that you'd said something about the punk film FemLab, correct? That you were starting that, and I heard that Melissa Leo got involved somehow. And it just sounds like a really important and interesting project for, female filmmakers and just, I think just independent filmmakers in general. So can you just, as the last sort of talking point, can you just talk to me a little bit about that? What inspired it? What you have to do with it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it kind of comes full circle to the film, the muscle I was talking about that I think needs to be maintained and developed and worked as filmmakers. That women, I mean, maybe because we're pulled in more directions as parents, as partners, as whatever, and maybe because of the whole inequality in how many funds and how many opportunities there are for women to work consistently. I was just getting tired of being at film festivals over the last 5 years and seeing incredible films written and directed by women, but then never seeing them come back for a second, third, fourth, fifth film. I mean, we see incredible bodies of work by men. We see Woody Allen making a film every couple of years. We see 40, 50, 30, 40 films made by men. There's a few women in Europe, but nowhere near in the hundreds having really big bodies of work in fiction feature film. Documentary, we we do better because we can just go out there and do it with very little resources. Television, a lot of women in television, directing television, running television shows. But in fiction, features, there's a big inequality between the women writing and directing feature films consistently and the men doing it. So I came back going, I just want to see more women doing it on a more regular basis. And so I really spontaneously just put out a call on Facebook saying, I want to form a lab with women that have already made at least one feature film. So this is not a springboard into making features. I want to meet with women and work with women who are writers and directors who already have a feature film under their belt. They are interested in a career in filmmaking and are interested in really going long term. And so I said we would meet once a month for 6 months, and the commitment was for each of us to write a full-length feature film fiction screenplay. And I got 20 women. You had to be Canadian. You had to be a woman. You had to have a feature done that I could see. And I watched all 20 features. I knew some of the women, so I had conversations with them. Otherwise, I had meetings or Skype calls or whatever. And this was all happening in November. So in December, when I was at Whistler, and I won an award for the Animal Project from the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. It was the EDA award, but it was being presented by the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, which are women journalists in the UK, in the US, and in Canada. And I didn't know I was getting the award. I was in a room of 100 or so people. But because it was coming from women, and because I was in the middle of looking at all these features and deciding who the women were going to be for this Punk Films Fem Lab, I just was on the podium and I was like, okay, I want to see more films by women. This is being given to me by women, so let me tell you what I'm doing. I'm doing this Punk Films Fem Lab. There's going to be 6 Canadian women. I will be one of them who are going to commit to each writing a screenplay. So there'll be 6 scripts by 6 Canadian women, ready in 6 months. Who in this room will step up with $6,000 for a first look at the scripts in June? And the room was just silent, and I didn't even know what I was doing because, of course, I hadn't selected the women yet. I was now promising a first look of their scripts to someone in the room. It could have been anybody. And I just didn't, of course, I didn't think it through, but I was just kind of on fire with this idea of wanting to see more films by women and kind of taking a chance to see if anybody, because, I hear lip service all the time, people going there should be more films by women. But I was just curious, would anybody in that room, and there was some money in the room, would anybody step up with $6,000? And in my mind, the narrative was no one was going to. And that would be what I would expect. The room was silent, and I just thought, all right, then I'm going to just start counting down from 6. And I just started counting down 6, 5, 4, and I thought, okay, no one's going to stand up because everyone's just looking around the room. And then all of a sudden, this woman sitting at the variety table shot out of her seat with her arms in the air and just shouted, "I'll do it." And I had no idea who she was. I thought she was a writer because Variety was doing a spotlight on 10 screenwriters. And I thought, I just burst in tears and went, oh my God, I didn't think anyone would stand, and it's a woman, and that makes me so happy. And then I went back to my seat and I was shaking, and I just didn't even know what had just happened. And then this woman with red braids and glasses starts walking towards me, and I go, oh my God, it's Melissa Leo. And she just crouched beside me and said, I love this initiative. I have no idea who you are, but I think what you're doing is great. I will get you the $6,000. I might share it with Jane Fonda. I hope that's okay, but you'll get it before the holidays. And I can't wait to see what comes out of this. It's the best $6,000 I've ever spent.
Wow.
And she's been amazing.
And she did it. She followed through. She did it.
She totally sent me a check within 2 weeks. We've now just our 5th lab session. There's been 6 of us, and it's been an unbelievable experience for me. The women are incredible. And we just had our session up at a cottage in May. Before that, we all went to Montreal in April. And we have our final session in Toronto. And I will send Melissa the 6 scripts on June 30th. It's been amazing.
When is the...
And she's been just supportive and encouraging, and every month I just connect with her. I send her a picture of us, and I just give her a little update, but she just emails back and just says, keep going, right on, can't wait to read them.
Oh, that's great.
You know,
that's great.
Risk it, take a chance, follow your gut.
Yeah.
Right on, you know?
Uh-huh.
It's been fantastic.
So when is
but that, you know, the risk wasn't, I mean, it was crazy in a sense of, I can't imagine doing that again. Again, it was just one of those impulsive things. But having no idea who would have stood up, I mean, imagine it was just someone who, I don't know, was the wrong person. And then, of course, you know, there was a ton of press in the room. It could have been the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the risk was in no one standing up. I think the risk was in maybe the wrong person standing up. But then I sort of believe that intention lives in the stuff you do. And if your intention is to kind of attract a like-minded person, you know, the odds are that will happen. Every once in a while it doesn't. But so what? Take the chance. Like, everybody's so paralyzed by fear of, like, what if, like, this is a disaster? And when I was up there, I just thought, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go for it. And whatever happens, happens. Let's take a chance.
That's beautiful. It really is.
It's
great.
Yeah, and have you seen the picture of her? Like, the way she stood up with her arms in the air is amazing.
I saw it on Twitter, when I was doing my research.
Yeah. Like, she just shot out of her seat, you know? It was like a hallelujah moment. And everyone just erupted in applause, and I burst in tears. It was so raw and so unexpected.
I wish I could have been there to see that. That's incredible.
Yeah. It was definitely a highlight, and like one of my top 10 great moments so far.
Well, I think that's a pretty inspiring moment to end on. I don't know if we can get much better than that.
Well, how are you going to transcribe this? I'm so curious what you're going to pull of this. We talked for a long time. Mostly I'm on the phone with people, and they're like, okay, I'm going to have to transcribe this, so it's going to be 10 minutes tops, because now you've got,
so boring.
You know.
No, that's so boring. I get a lot from the conversation. I get a lot from how you say things. I tend to sort of go more for atmosphere, I think, in my pieces.
Cool.
And I think you've given me more than enough. I mean, I'll sit here with this. I'll transcribe it for an hour. I don't care.
You're so awesome.
Well, thank you. You're awesome as well.
Well, thank you. I will, if you want to check anything, like any sort of spelling things or anything off me, absolutely email, and I will get you the Vimeo link.
Definitely.
And let's definitely keep in touch, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. I would, that'd be great. And there's one other thing I do, aside from recording this conversation, I do want to ask if it's okay. I wasn't expecting to do this, but would it be okay for me to maybe, edit a couple of your direct quotes from this recording and maybe put it on my blog? Okay.
Yeah, just some not too rambly stuff.
No, I don't think it didn't sound rambly at all. I've had interviews where people sounded rambly, but you weren't rambling. It was all, stuff that I was hanging on to every word, so it didn't seem like rambling to me.
Okay, cool. And next time you're in Toronto, we have to go for a drink. I can't believe you came and went. I mean, I was gone also, but next time you're in Toronto, just reach out to me so we can try and coordinate a drink or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm coming up in August, so.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So message, because I'll be in and out of town in August, but I'm not far. So definitely let me know when you're coming and where you're going to be, and we can meet up.
Oh, definitely. I'm excited. So,
okay, great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, all right. Well, take care.
Okay, you too.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.